Thank you for joining us today. Today, our guest is Natalie Hanson from TSA Powerlifting. And I think you also run Corvus Strength as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm not actually with TSA.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like I cohabitate with TSA, but
yes.
I don't.
You're with them, but not.
I'm technically a competitor to TSA.
Oh, okay. Technically. How does that work living under the same roof as the head of TSA? Do you guys like fight for clients every once in a while and like get like fist fights, duke it out, and then like go to your separate corners and then come back like, I'm sorry, we're good?
No. Yeah, no. We've had people like reach out to maybe like both of us and say like, who should I ask for coaching or whatever. And I don't do it for my primary living. Mm-hmm. So I'm oftentimes, if somebody's like I'm not gonna try to like salesperson you. Like if somebody comes to me for coaching, I'm not like, I'll tell you what to expect and why we might be the right fit, but it doesn't hurt me if you go elsewhere. And especially if you go to somebody that I trust, and obviously like I think Bryce is a great coach. So I'm like, yeah, go hire Bryce. Yeah. But yeah, so it's because I'm not making my primary living through coaching, it doesn't really, there's no like tension.
You guys don't have any breakfast where it's like morning Natalie and he just like sips his coffee and looks away?
not any more than just any other couple might have that.
Very fair.
That's a very fair statement. So if you could take a second to introduce yourselves for the listeners who may not know who you are, I think that'd be great.
Sure. So as Matt said, I'm Natalie Hanson. I'm a lifter in USA Powerlifting for the time being and the IPF. And I compete.
That's foreshadowing if I've ever heard it.
I compete in mostly single ply. I started powerlifting raw and then transitioned over to single ply in like 2015. I've been competing in USA Powerlifting for 9 years this year. And before that, I did CrossFit and other fitness things. I did sports, whatever, like the kind of usual thing. But at this point in my powerlifting career, like I feel like that's all so irrelevant because it's 9 years ago. Like I haven't done that in almost a decade. So it's almost like not even worth bringing up. I did CrossFit for 2 years. So yeah, I've been competing for quite a while. I'm like becoming a seasoned veteran, I think. And I'm a coach for my company called Corvus Strength Co. We primarily focus on the demographic of female athletes, so mostly competitors and mostly women. And we do online remote coaching, and I do a little bit of in-person stuff too at Elevate Barbell in Fort Collins. Let's see, by day, I run a nonprofit that builds renewable energy projects and does energy efficiency education in rural Alaska. I do that from Colorado. I'm originally from Western Alaska, born and raised, so still work for those people and my community, which is really, really fulfilling. And that's what I do, Monday through Friday during the day. And then just my coaching is my nights and weekends hobby.
So I think that's an interesting transition because you kind of transitioned out of raw powerlifting as a lot of more people were moving into raw powerlifting, and you went into single ply, which was a division that, just looking at the history of powerlifting, it seems to be getting smaller. And like right now, the only so what was the impetus for that transition, and how do you like going in single ply? By the way, if you guys don't know Natalie's single ply numbers, I just watched you bench 474 to a 2 board in the shirt the other day at like RPE 6. So like, yeah. She's strong as hell, guys.
Yeah. So I think by the numbers, like just by the what we look at, if we were looking at it as a relative relationship to raw, yeah, equipped powerlifting looks like it's getting smaller because raw is getting bigger. But if you look at the numbers of equipped powerlifting on their own, it's pretty stable. Like I think 2021 is not going to do any division any favors. So we have 80 something people total competing at equipped, like open nationals, but normally it's like over 200, maybe 300.
Oh, wow.
And I think the reality is that division has stayed really stable over the years. There's a pretty significant filter or kind of funnel into the open equipped division from the collegiate programs. those collegiate programs that have been that are now like have a lot of raw presence in them still have their equipped teams. So there's a pretty substantial, still a pretty substantial equipped collegiate division. But yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely transitioned as raw was growing. So I competed raw. My first meet was 2012, and I did a whole bunch of meets through. I mean, I still every once in a while do an equip or do a raw meet, but I definitely did transition when it was like my last raw nationals was 2016, but before that, the last raw nationals that I was like serious about was 2014. And then 2015 was that year in Scranton where it just blew up and there was 1,000+ lifters. And my last like serious raw nationals was Aurora, which was like a few hundred. So yeah, I was always taught, or like kind of, it was always presented to me that equipped powerlifting is like what you strive for, and you get experience and kind of a base level of strength by training raw for a few years. Once you kind of hit a point that's like, okay, your positioning is really consistent, you are training consistently, you've already put on a bunch of muscle mass. Yeah, I think it's now time for you to like take it to the next level. That's how it was presented to me. And so when my coach at the time told me like, all right, let's try knee wraps, like, let's ease into it. It was like so flattering, like, cause it had always been like this, I want to graduate. I want to be like, added into this next level. So, yeah, so that was just kind of like the natural progression that you're supposed to take based on like kind of my understanding early on. Obviously that is now totally a different mentality. And raw powerlifting is what people strive for. And then it seems like sometimes people who compete raw and then like get beat up or lose interest in the raw side start to transition over to equipped to like having, something interesting or new PRs or whatever it is. So yeah, so that's kind of my like progression into it.
I think that it's going to be interesting because I think in like another 5 or 10 years, I think there's going to be a huge surge in equipped powerlifting. Huge surge, because it's like you said, when people start getting beat up and start getting injured and start having like hip issues and shoulder issues, the gear ends up becoming a little bit more protective for them to be able to continue doing the sport that they love and put a lot of time into to begin with. But now they're going to be able to do it without pain and put up much bigger numbers than they were doing before. So I do think that like, even like just because of the growth of raw powerlifting, the people that eventually do kind of like what you said about graduating into wraps or like single ply or multiply, I think that's also going to grow exponentially, just not yet. Would you agree or disagree?
I think there's a cultural shift that's taking place that might impede on that, because because one reason that raw powerlifting is so accessible and so like appealing to the masses is that you can do it by yourself. You can show up to the gym whenever you want to. It's just like any other fitness,
or your garage
fitness program, or your garage. Yeah. It's just like a bodybuilding program or whatever you want to do. Like, you can show up and do it on your own. And equipped powerlifting, like, there are people who do it, like Blaine is like kind of actually Blaine doesn't even really do it by himself anymore. Like, he has people come in and spot him and stuff and wrap his knees, but to perform at a high
himself.
Right. Yeah. And then he invites his friends. To expect high performance by yourself consistently is so impossible. And I think as people get more and more used to the freedom of raw powerlifting, right? The being able to just train whenever you want or whatever, like that level of accessibility, it gets harder and harder to encourage the small training kind of group vibes that is absolutely necessary for like me by myself. I'm training in gear with thankfully a group of people at our gym. An individual set for me requires at a minimum 3 people.
Yeah.
Because I have Bryce wrapping my knees, he spots me as well, and then we have 2 side spotters. And that's only, imagine if there were like 4 of us all in gear training together. we can all do that for each other, but you need more hands. Like we can't train. It's not optimal to like train and also wrap your friend's knees. Like that's exhausting. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think in theory, what your suggestion is probably right on, but I don't know in reality if it's going to shake out like that. I think more people will probably leave powerlifting and go to jujitsu than will switch over to equipped powerlifting.
That is the quintessential washed up powerlifter thing is as soon as you're like, oh, I'm done powerlifting, I'm going to go do jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah. And I think part of it is that powerlifting is really monotonous, and some of us thrive in that years and years of the same shit every single day, like every week after week, year after year. I love it. I don't mind it at all. Like I have no problems with motivation, but I see people, I coach people, I see people around me all the time that just are like, man, I just want something new. Yeah. And oftentimes if somebody's like under 2 years in the sport and they're like, I just want to do something else, I'm like, that's a red flag to me.
I can't make it through the 4th week of a phase most times, so I'm definitely not built for that.
when I used to, before we launched like Meat Rocket and Beef Castle, when I was coaching Kyle, it'd be like 2 weeks in, he'd be like, I'm bored. I was like, oh my God, you just started this new phase.
Like, all right, well,
different things.
I must sub out these accessories for something else. Okay.
Oh my God.
I'll keep
you don't even have a chance to get good at them.
I'm the worst. I'm the worst client. I know it.
Every time. It'd be like, I just get texts and be like all caps, I'm bored with like 15 Ds. Yeah. It's like, dude, you just started. You got
I also overshoot my RPEs all the time. Like I'm the worst client there ever was.
My favorite text that I've ever received from Kyle was, there was one time it was like in November when I programmed out like a set of 6 for him on trap bar deadlift, and he'd just flown back from New York, and he was warming up and he was texting me like during warm-ups. He was like, 500 felt terrible. I was like, okay, call it a little earlier today. He's like, going for 515 for 6. And I was like, okay, cool. He was like, 515 for 6 was awful. I was like, okay, probably cap it there. And he's like, going for 550. And I was like, don't do that. And then he texted me back. He goes, didn't move at all. And I was like, I could have guessed that.
Yeah.
It didn't move. And now my feelings hurt just as much as my body does.
Yeah. We're at least you got on the same level. Everything's like evened out, right?
Yeah.
Predictable.
Everything is straight to the ground.
Everything crushed. Yeah. My back really hurts going into this session. I think I'm going to max out today.
Just gonna shoot for the stars. Land on the moon.
Yep.
That's what my parents always told me.
So what got you into powerlifting and training, or like training in general? Because you said you have had a bit of an interesting path to get to where you are now in single ply. Like you said, you started with CrossFit and a bunch of other just general athletics before transitioning into powerlifting. What was that? What was the impetus to even get you like started in the gym or training in general?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of starts back like my desire for just like the work and the kind of grind of it all kind of started back when I was like a senior in high school, and I am 5'3" and wanted to play college volleyball. And I knew that if I was going to play college volleyball at 5'3", I was going to have to be a fucking stud. Like, like
the cards were not exactly stacked in your favor.
No, not at all. And I put myself through I just basically made up a training regimen, like literally had no clue what I was doing. I had never been taught anything about lifting weights or fitness or anything. And I was like, I think I need to do a shit ton of cardio and like just work all my muscles all the time, because I'm from a small town in Alaska. Mm-hmm. And so if you're, especially for volleyball, if you were out of season for the sport, you had no options to train the sport. So I was like, I know that I'm going to have to rely on just like my, brute work ethic and, my just natural talent and athleticism when I show up to this tryout. I did have a tryout. And so I just like fucking grinded like for several months. And I had never really done that before. It was always just kind of like, oh, we go from sport to sport. You play volleyball, you play basketball, you do Native Youth Olympics, you do cross country, you just kind of like roll one to the next. And so that you stay in pretty good shape. But this season that I was graduating from high school, I decided to just like focus on like this whole goal.
Mhm.
Anyway, I just remember like feeling so hungry for it. And even though I knew it wasn't really going to happen, like I just kind of was like, this is not realistic. I don't even know the logistics of how to do this, but I'm going to try. And then I obviously didn't. I played club at in college, but I didn't play for college. And but I continued to go to the gym, and I always went to the gym with no idea what I was doing, but I would bust my ass at doing random shit that I would read in Women's Health, or I don't even know. Like this was like before Instagram, right? So I was like, I'm 31. Like when I was in college, that was 12 years ago or 13 years ago.
You're just trolling the bodybuilding.com forums, being like, this
Not
looks like a
even.
good
I
one.
didn't know. I didn't even know. Actually, what's funny is I was at Boise State University when bodybuilding.com would have been like at its like on its come up.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what bodybuilding was. I had a friend by the time I was like later in college, a friend of mine who started competing in bodybuilding. And I was like, that's fucking cool. Like you get to just like go to the gym and do bicep curls and like build muscle. And that's like, I'm into that. Like I want to look like people who look like that. And this is a dude, but I wanted to be shredded and jacked. Like I did not care.
Yeah.
And so I would go to the gym and I would bust my ass like 7 days a week. Like I had no understanding of what I was trying to do. I'd go down to the freeway area and pick up 60-pound dumbbells and do shrugs in the front of the mirror. Like college dudes are looking at me like, what the fuck is she doing? And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having fun.
Yeah.
So I'd get a pump, like I'd chase a pump for sure. And like, anyway, one of my friends started doing CrossFit, and she would, she was like getting like building muscle. She was always a runner. So she's like building muscle and like talking about these hard workouts. And I was like, that sounds really dumb. Like you can't use your arms for a day. Like after your workouts, you did 100 pull-ups and you can't use your arms. Like that seems really stupid. I'd rather get my productive feeling workouts in. But I finally like she convinced me to do CrossFit, and it was like, I was in like so fast, sucked in. I was good at a lot of the stuff. It just came naturally to me. And just the excuse to like pour everything into that was like amazing. Like that I had somebody telling me what to do. So I would show up at the gym and there'd be a workout, and I would just be like, fuck yeah, I can just like go all in. I can change my diet and eat like a crazy person, eat strict paleo every day of the week and have an excuse for it. And basically got like most CrossFit people do, like full on into it. And I realized I was really, really good at this like strength stuff. And people would tell me in my first few months in CrossFit, they would be like, you should do weightlifting, or you should do this or that. Cause like on, week 1, I squatted a 5x5 at 205. I had never squatted before.
Yeah.
And this was in 2010 or something. And people were watching me like, what the fuck? And I was like, I don't know. Like I have no idea.
Was that good, or like,
yeah. Yeah. I'm like in socks and like a random ass outfit. Like I have no clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, so you just go down and up. And I was like this, and I did 5x5 at 205. And I was like, they're like, you're really strong. And I'm like, that's cool. I don't really know what I'm going to do with that. And then I did, I did my CrossFit level 1 seminar, which is like, you have to always, everybody does that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the instructors was this girl who was a multiply lifter. She's like probably 125 or 130, maybe even 135, jacked as hell. And she was a multiply lifter with a huge bench. At the time, they were like, she benches 300 pounds and in multiply. And I'm like, now I think back and I'm like, that's not good.
That's nothing.
but in our CrossFit brains, our completely uneducated little world, we were like 300 pounds, like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And she was like, that when I realized like, oh, like strength training is what I would be good at. It took me another probably year and a half to really like learn that was an option for me to go down that path. By that point, I was living in Alaska, and I squatted like maybe 315, benched 165, pulled 315 probably, or 300, because that was not an And someone came into our gym one time and was like, do you want to do a powerlifting meet? He was looking at the record board on the wall, and he said like, who benches 165? And I was like, that's me, because I weighed about 160. Yeah. I weighed about like 160 at the time, and I was like, that's me. And he's like, that exceeds the state record for bench press. And I was like, huh, that's cool. How do you do that thing? Like, I just lay down and do this, like what are the stipulations here? And so I signed up for a meet and did my first meet in 2012. And I was a junior. So I broke like a bunch of junior American records, like across, I think, squat, bench in total. And I was like, hey, I'm pretty good at this thing. And so I decided to do another one. And then I qualified for nationals, which wasn't anything at the time. That was like not a hard thing to do. Nationals, that was the first year of the IPF weight classes changing. So it went from 75 to 72. So I was a 75 pretty comfortably by this point. They had a 72 kilo weight class. I was like, 3 kilos, that's nothing.
Yeah, you can make that
until I started only powerlifting and putting a bunch of like not doing as much CrossFit and cardio and eating more protein and actually like building muscle. And then I was like, my brother, who's conveniently a D1 wrestler at the time, I was like, I need to cut 11 pounds. He's like, all right, I got you. No
He's
problem.
like, oh, only 11? That's it. I could get you 40 down.
Is the competition is weigh-in
Tomorrow?
today?
Yeah.
Like, is it tonight?
Yeah. So I was like, again, still just like totally uninformed. I went around and asked people who I knew and like people who I felt like were smart. This is like a very small version of the sport that I had still only understood. So I'd asked the few people that I knew about nutrition advice and stuff like that, and really couldn't get anything. It was like, oh, you're going to do a water load, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm 11 pounds over. So, and I was lean, like I had a 6-pack, like I was not in a place to like lose 11 pounds. And it was like a month away at this point. So anyway, I did a very, very, very bad weight cut, basically led by my brother. We didn't know any better, but I was sweating in the hotel bathroom. We made a little sauna in the hotel bathroom, and I was doing,
right?
Yep. I was doing push-ups and sit-ups and jumping jacks circuits for like a couple hours. Refueled horribly because I was still eating kind of paleo at the time. So I scarfed down like bacon and eggs after weighing in, and
no glycogen, just
none. Yeah, there like maybe were some potatoes in the like breakfast meal that I had, but I was like, by that point I was pretty full, and I was like, I'm just gonna drink some water, like pure water. Anyway, I had awful cramps, a terrible performance. Like, I think I went 5 for 9. I had calf cramps the whole day, like just terrible. And I qualified for the Arnold though. And I was like, this is cool. Like I can just do really bad and still like
make
progress.
Still be good.
Yeah. So I decided, and so at this point, by that point, Matt Gary was coaching me. He was doing my programming, but he wouldn't offer me nutrition advice. He basically said like, that's out of my scope. And I'm like, okay, fair, but I'm 10 pounds over, right? So,
but like, help, please.
Yeah, please. So he coached me till that point, and then I qualified for the Arnold. And I remember we were about to leave. This was in Orlando when Raw Nationals 2013, and my family and I were about to leave the hotel, go on a little vacation, and I went up to his hotel room, and I'm like, I know I had a really bad meet. I want to do the Arnold though. I qualified. And he's like, all right, we can do that, but you have to take this seriously. And I was like, I'm in, I'll take it seriously. And that was kind of the moment that I like went all in powerlifting. I really like took that. I liked the variety of everything I was doing and just kind of like having so many balls in the air, but I recognized that was, at that point, I recognized like, okay, this is getting in the way and I need to specialize one way or the other. And this is kind of, the writing seems to be on the wall for me. Like I am far better at 3 lifts than I am at 150 different movements. Who knows what they're going to be on what day. So yeah, that was my progression into, all right, we're going to be serious about powerlifting.
I mean, that's pretty cool though, because especially with the time, and I think that's an important thing that a lot of people, especially in powerlifting today, just don't understand is like the difference in time period from 2012 to now is there was no access to powerlifting on social media. Social media barely existed. So like there was no information about it at all. So the people who were like competing in it were had to be very, very serious and had to know things about it to even get into the sport in general. Whereas like now you just see some dude squatting on Instagram, like, oh, that guy's probably a power lifter. So like back then it was a lot more niche and a lot more specialized, and you really had to like hunt down good information or good
Yeah.
coaching and things like that.
Yeah, I remember specifically I'm super, super competitive. So like if I go into something, I like have to be ready to get ready to win this thing. And so even going into Raw Nationals that year, I had I knew like we had the roster, and I don't even know if the roster had qualifying totals on it, but I know it showed like junior 72s, and here's all the girls that I'm competing against.
Yeah.
And what I had to do was go to find the states that those lifters were from and go to the state USA Powerlifting website. So it'd be like usapowerliftingmaryland.com, and they might have uploaded the most recent meet results, but no guarantee.
Powerlifting didn't exist. There was no
none of it.
Just search that person's name on Instagram and be like, oh, I'm stronger.
No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
They didn't have their totals in the captions on their like profile.
And I don't think that Instagram even had videos at that point.
I don't think so.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
Just pictures.
Yeah. So just pictures. Yeah. So I remember, look, there were only 2 girls that I could find in any results anywhere. And so I was like, all right, these are my like, now you guys are my enemies. So we're like, this is war and it's on.
So I anyway, don't know you, but I hate you.
I hate you. Yeah. So yeah, there was no information. And at one point, even like a year, maybe 2 years later, I followed I guess it was Juggernaut. I guess it would have been Juggernaut. And there was like one lifter that they sponsored at the time. Man, I wish I could remember her name. She was also multiply. And she posted her diet, which was like the carbs after dark kind of thing. And I was so into that. And I remember messaging her on Facebook one time because I was curious about something about it. Like, how does this, like some technical aspect of like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what are these supposed to, like, I don't remember exactly. And she never responded. And I was like, that bitch.
I'm gonna crush.
I'm coming for you.
I can't even get information from like somebody who's posting articles about how to, you know, like do your carb restriction. I'm like trying to like get information where I can, because there was nothing like, or I didn't know where to look, I guess is part of it too. I didn't know where to look. So that was a hard come up.
But again, like even though like now, if you're looking at trying to find things, you've got Reddit and Instagram and Discord chats and open powerlifting and all of these blogs and things from all of these coaches and all these other like places where you can find good information. But back then, there really wasn't anything about it. Like the further back you go in history, it's like you'd look at like back when like Kurt Kowalski and like Ed Cohen were competing, and you'd look at like it'd be like who the hell are these people, and like how did they find this sport in general? Like it's like almost like one of those things where like powerlifting used to be kind of like Fight Club, where it was like the first rule was you don't talk about it, and you just show up and like people you go to a random gym and you'd see like a person, or like you talked about like the multiply woman who benched like over 300. It's like if you took you now and time traveled back to like 2012 and then did a bench workout where you're consistently repping over 400, you would just watch people's brains just melt because there was no access, no information, and nobody would have any idea what you're doing. They'd be like, this is the strongest human I've ever seen.
And what is she wearing? Is that a tight t-shirt?
It doesn't make any sense to me. Why are her arms stuck here? Like
no, it was a weird time, and to think about people starting now and coming in and it's just like this barrage of information constantly. A lot of it is good, a lot of it is bad. They have to filter through it. Like I don't really know which way I'd rather have it, but there is like a constant, I mean, you can't even get interested in powerlifting without then learning who the strong ass people in your weight class are that you are now like have to, you're obligated to compare yourself to.
Yeah.
That's not even a thing, because the moment you post a squat video on Instagram, someone knows somebody and they're like, hey, have you seen Jennifer Thompson? It's like, cool. I was really happy with my 1 plate bench.
Yeah. And then she just benched 315. Great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. But I mean, like, it's definitely true though. Cause like this is probably going to make me sound like a boomer, but I'm also 30. So like, this is not me being an old person, but like, I always think it would be better back then to start getting into like powerlifting and training, because like you said, now the flood of information is so high that, and like I see this often with a lot of the younger lifters that I coach or talk to or we deal with in our mentorships. A lot of them suffer from paralysis by analysis, where there's so much information out there about you should only squat this way. No, that person's dumb. You should only squat this way. No, that person's dumb. You should only do it like this. There's so much conflicting information out there, and it's so hard to develop that kind of bullshit filter that we just get some people that are either like super strong because they don't care about any of that stuff, or some people that are just so paralyzed by analysis. You get those lifters that are like, well, I'm not going to compete until I'm good enough to.
Yeah.
Oh like I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like the Yuval Harariism, where you're just talking about like disseminating information is like the new skill now. It's not, there's no shortage in access of information in any field. It's always just like, what can you filter? And fitness is tough because like half of what we see, whether you're just talking about the general fitness world or, specificity based, competition of any kind, is just so it's anecdote, right? It's just like, oh, well, you're literally just a freak athlete also, like on top of that. And the things that you're saying, like, yeah, that might work for you, but that does not work for like the person like coming in like the novice lifter, this person coming in like early into the gym. Like that's just, that's not going to go well. Like Matt and I was joking about like just like the volume or the intensity, whatever it is, whatever that programming looks like, is just, they're trying to take your chapter 30 on like chapter 1 or something. It's not going to go well. It's just not going to happen well for you.
It's like the shredded influencers who talk about like becoming vegan. They're like, this is what I look like because I'm vegan. It's like, well, no, you ate a bunch of protein and you trained a long time before any of this stuff.
I followed you 5 years ago.
You became vegan 6 months ago.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about?
Exactly. Your vegan diet and calisthenics only didn't get you your 22-inch biceps. That's not how you got there. Like,
we used to work at the same gym.
Yeah.
And eat burritos for lunch together after we did bicep curls for 2 hours.
So what I think this would be an interesting thing to talk about. What got you into coaching, and what got you into coaching specifically women?
I felt like, I guess part of like the struggle was on that kind of come up that I described. I felt like the only places for information were, even if the information was for both genders, it felt like it was designed for men. The vibe, I always felt like the vibe was for guys. Like it was like a masculine kind of branding or whatever, like those sorts of things. Like it was always just, I felt like nobody was talking to me. And so I had coached, like I had written programs for people at my CrossFit gym. Even after I stopped doing CrossFit, I still was coaching CrossFit. And there would be people interested in like, strength and getting stronger or doing a local meet or something like that. And so I'd write programs for people for free, like just because I kind of knew some stuff, but I would base it would just be like, I don't know, based on a kind of a 5-3-1 style, but like some tweaks that I would make that seemed appropriate or things like that. And but I never like aspired to be a powerlifting coach in that way. I just kind of like thought it was interesting and it was cool to watch people get better. But in 2016 or so, I became pretty close friends with a couple other female lifters that were like some of my first friends in the sport that were like my age women. So I had plenty of guys that I was friends with because the sport is full of them. And then a couple of like older women that I was friends with that were like, had been in the sport for 20 years, like they'd been around for a while. And we just kind of like, we talked about it endlessly. Like, man, there are just like no female coaches. There's no one, like we'd see like new seminars getting, being shared, and it would just be like a lineup of dudes. And I'm like, this is so frustrating. So we decided let's just give it a shot and start a coaching company. So my friend Chelsea Savitt and I started Beef Puff Barbell, and it was the two of us and then her partner. And then we hired and kind of mentored two other over the couple of years. We were in operation for, I think, 3 years. And we hired two female coaches and kind of trained them up and got them like up to our standard and brought them in. And so that was kind of, it was more just to like, okay, I'm going to take on some clients so that I can create a business around this. And then I can get more women involved and like give them time to become coaches. So now Beef Puff dissolved. Chelsea decided she didn't want to be in powerlifting coaching anymore. And I started Corvus Strength Co. And it's me. And then I have a coach that works for me named Becky Holcomb, who's a 84 plus, super freaky strong, single ply and raw lifter. And so we coach together, and the quest to like expand has taken a back seat, but I still definitely focus on female athletes, on that experience. Like how can I best message to female athletes? And that's really what I'm interested in. I know what kind of challenges there are out there, and I feel like I can really help in that way.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that is something that's really cool, especially in the day and age that we are now, because especially over social media, it's like the male to female relationship of a coach to client ends up kind of getting tested and pushed into like weird directions at some point, especially if a male coach is doing like nutrition for females, and their standard or expectation is progress photos, right? Where it's like things kind of get weird, and like things can get kind of the waters can get kind of muddied pretty easily. So I think and it's one of those things where like it becomes unfair, or it feels like unfair, unsafe for the female client, because it becomes to the point where it's like, oh well, I might not be getting the best out of this, or I might be getting a little bit too much, or this might be just a little bit weird. So I think that ends up being a really cool thing that you guys are doing by making it more accessible to more people.
Yeah, I feel like as coaches, we have this window into people's lives that is like unmatched anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Like just because in training, like everything kind of comes to a head in training, everything in your life, right? So like if you're having relationship stress, or you're stressed at work, or you're having health problems, like everything kind of comes together and shows up in your training. And so many, I just feel like there are a lot of experiences, like gender specific experiences, that we can relate and empathize to the other gender, or to the other sex, but we can't necessarily like if you have a female, like a female client who gets pregnant, and obviously you can be certified in that in being a powerlifting or like a strength coach for pregnant women or whatever, but there's a lot of that's just kind of like, ooh, I don't really know how this all works.
Yeah.
Right? I imagine, I'm speaking for men, but I would imagine that there's a lot to it that's a little like just, kind of like, I can't even really imagine what, that feels like, or what kind of pressure you're experiencing, or what kind of pelvic pain you have, like those sorts.
As a pre and postnatal certified coach, I can tell you with 100% certainty that I agree with you. Absolutely. And I'm like, go find somebody else.
Oh yeah. As a pre and post certified coach who has a wife who's had 2 kids, like I can, and trained through that and been active. Like I could definitely tell you that I know nothing about what that
I feel like you guys are exceptions. You guys are exceptions to the generalization I was making.
That I would say refer out.
I know my boundaries and my limits.
Yeah, for sure. But it sucks though. It sucks if you've established a relationship. If a coach has established a 3-year relationship with an athlete, and then all of a sudden they get pregnant, and it's like, I can't work with you anymore. Like, come back to me in 15 months when you're ready to start like training again. That's not like, we want continuity, I think.
That's a very hard conversation to have.
It's really, really hard. So it's like, okay, how do we find that balance? And not saying that only women can do that, but you have to be really, really, like, you have to be very intentional and
I think
absolutely.
As a male coach, you just have to be aware, and I think and open-minded and wanting to ask questions and getting feedback. And I think that's where, if I'm in that situation now and I have a really good relationship with a female client and she gets pregnant, like, I'm going to make sure that, like, in that same circle of, DPTs and nutritionists and soft tissue, like all those people that have, like, I have like a pelvic floor specialist and somebody who specializes in pregnancy and post-pregnancy type training that I can at least refer out and consult with, and maybe bring them in as a third party, right? That we can all coordinate and get on the same page from a programming perspective. If my client doesn't want to switch coaches or, whatever as well, I think I think coaches in general just need to have as big a network as possible. And I think that's an overlooked realm from that perspective that a lot of us just don't think about quite as much, because it is sometimes a little more uncommon than some of the other more obvious stuff from an injury rehab or a nutrition perspective that we see.
I will say, having done this multiple times as a coach, referring out and bringing other people in to either consult with clients or to just send people out earns you a ton more street cred than just being that person that's like, I'm going to try to fix this issue or do this on my own.
With the client, with the client too.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree.
So,
well, props to you guys for having pre and postnatal certifications. That's awesome.
I'm going to tell you, it was like a afternoon course. Like, it was not,
okay.
Mine was 4 hours.
I learned some
basics.
Like, and again, I think there is more stuff too, because that's something people will ask me about all the time with, other athletic endeavors. And it's like, it's not just the baby. You have to look at hormones. You have to look at relaxin and prolactin and things of that nature that are going to have like joint issues and things, so they're and the psychological aspect of, coaches are not at all, trained from that perspective either, so there's a lot going on that I think, again, coaches just need to be aware, and they need to know what our scope is and what our boundaries are. And it just flows into everything else.
And that was actually a huge thing that you said earlier when you were talking about your coach for Raw Nationals, who for nutrition, he was like, well, that's kind of outside of my scope of practice. It's like, that's something that you hear so infrequently nowadays.
Anyone will call themselves a nutritionist. Right. That grinds my gears.
The
internet is the place where everybody's an expert.
I wouldn't say that's my thing that I hate the most, but it's up there. Like, it ranks pretty high.
There's
foreshadowing.
There's a local gym near me where one of my buddies is an actual RD, and he went to school to become a registered dietitian. And he went to this gym, and this guy was the guy who owns the gym was like, well, yeah, like, I did my like NASM nutrition one. So like, we're like, he's like, I'm a nutritionist, like certified nutritionist. So we're like the same. And my friend is just like, I'm going to leave now before I say some things that I'm going to regret, because we are not the same.
So my nutrition journey led me to eventually an RD that I work with currently. And it is an absolute fucking game changer working with an RD versus any, like, so I've had nutrition coaches who are like a powerlifting coach, but know a few things about macros. It's gone fine. And then I've had multiple who are just like, you're not doing anything. Like, you're not, I'm paying you, and you're not asking me questions. You're not, like, all that kind of thing was just like, here's your macros. They're only looking at my body weight. They're not asking about important questions. And then I've used the RP app, which I think was trying to kill me. And then I did my own nutrition, and now I work with an RD, and I know that her, like, what she wants to eventually do is put herself out of a job. Like, she wants to set me up so in such a strong way that I no longer need her services, but I kind of don't ever want to let her go. Like, that's kind of how I feel about it. She just is so good, and it's like the I think nutrition is having a shift right now in the last probably year, maybe more than that, to focus more around behavioral things and less around like just focusing on, you know, macronutrients and
Yep.
what exactly are you eating. And some of those lessons that I've learned in the last, I guess it's now like 6 months, are like I'm like blown away that I've been in fitness as long as I have, and I didn't have a grasp on those things. Yeah, so it's been really interesting.
But I mean, that's also one of the topics of conversation that's so complex and like context driven, that as a powerlifting coach who also does some nutrition stuff on the side for my clients, that's why I'm just like, here's your macros. If you want to get more in depth in this, I have a bunch. Here's the RDs that I will send you.
Yes,
Here's
exactly.
my entire
That's
referral network.
Yeah, I will do the same thing. If somebody wants, all they need is macros. I mean, I'll usually do a relatively extensive like dig into, let's figure out if this is actually all you need, or if there's more going on here. Or if I do give them just macros and like some very like loose guidelines for a few weeks, and I'm like, something's not clicking here, then I will very quickly identify that, try to identify that problem and say, I'm going to send you to someone else. And there's no shame in it. It's just like,
hi, this person actually went to school for it and they have a degree in it. They're very good. I'm just a guy who lifts weights on the internet.
I'm just the person who works out on the internet. Oh, go ahead.
You go for it, Kyle. You're going to say something.
Oh, I was just even going to say, like, when I was training people in person in New York, like to even caveat off of your statement, Natalie, is just nutrition is so social in so many environments as well, right? Where if I told somebody that they needed to, you know, watch their macros, or they needed to watch calories or watch alcohol or whatever, there were a lot of times where it's like, that was the only time those people socialized with their friends and families as well, or they had work events and things where they kind of had to participate, you know, based on what their jobs were. And so I couldn't necessarily tell people to avoid those things at all costs without detrimental things happening elsewhere in their lives from a behavioral standpoint. And, you know, so it's like, you also have to weigh like kind of the cost benefit of the information that you're giving people in a lot of ways as well. And I think that's where, again, just to back up everything, like I almost always at this point, I don't even talk macros with people that much as I'll just say like, hey, I've got this list of people, they do remote services, so you can talk to them where you're at. I've referred plenty of people to them. I've worked with some of them myself, and I fully trust them to also communicate with me what the information they're giving to you, so I can adjust your program according to that. And the networks are there, you know, and that's the beauty of, you know, for all the bad things on Instagram and social media, the ability to be able to network with people anywhere and find professionals that you know you can work with as a third party or as a triad for your clients is pretty unmatched right now. And like, I'm 38, you joke about being 31. I got into fitness with a flip phone. Okay, so like, forget about social media, we weren't even in like smartphones yet. Like, I had a Nokia Razor. It's sweet.
How do you record your squats on that?
Exactly. It's crazy. Yeah. Like pre-camera phone, everything. It's like, you just had to make sure everybody in the gym was watching while you were lifting. So
everyone, I'm about to take a sec.
Everybody
pay attention.
You can't even listen to music on your flip.
No, I had nothing.
Do you have an iPod with one of the armbands? Because I used to.
With the circle thing.
I used to have one of those when I was in college.
Pre-shuffle. The shuffle was actually a game changer.
Yes.
Oh my god,
because it was smaller.
100 song playlist, game changer. Just clip that onto your shirt, you're good to go.
Right here. Right at the collar.
But I mean, like that's another good point though, is especially like looking at doing nutrition. Like when I used to coach Gen Pop in person back when I was in the East Coast, like the point about having them be like having nutrition be their only time for socialization is huge, because I remember trying to coach somebody through like macro related coaching, and they basically just looked at me like, well, you can take that macro stuff and just like shove it up your ass, because I literally can't do any of it.
Yeah.
Because my entire job is entertaining and doing things.
Yeah.
So, and like that's
like
where
work lunches, like all kinds of things that come up in normal life that you cannot. I'm not gonna ask you to bring. Okay, when we made it cool for a little while to like bring your own food to the restaurant kind of thing. Like for a little while that was edgy and kind of cool and like inspiring, like, oh, you're so dedicated. Like that kind of stuff is like repulsive at this point. Like,
and well, because everybody kind of woke up and they went, oh, you're just a douchebag.
yeah exactly. Some people still haven't gotten the memo, but they'll eventually get there.
Me trying to convince like normal people who aren't gym people to
just meal prep and bring it.
Meal prep and Tupperware. And they're like, they literally look at me and be like, wait, you spend your entire Sunday cooking food? Like, I've got a wife and kids and like stuff that I want to
softball games.
You spend 7 hours meal prepping. What's the matter with you? I just like,
you're like, yeah, I'm 22 and I have nothing else going on. Why doesn't your life look exactly like mine?
Spend my other 4 hours at the gym.
Yeah. So I think this actually is a good transition into our only scripted question of the day, which is, Natalie, what do you see in training, fitness, or nutrition that really pisses you off and really grinds your gears? And you can feel free to name names if you want to, because if we have you back for a second one, we're just going to send an invite to that person and they're just going to pop up and you guys can debate.
Nice. I don't know. I've been thinking about this since the beginning of the, and I know if we had Bryson here, he would say, oh, this is what she hates. Because I get heated about stuff. But then when on the spot, I can't remember. But there are lots of things that I have opinions on. I don't know. I mean, not understanding. So I guess I did touch on it with the nutritionist thing, but one of the things is not understanding your lane and your scope is a real big problem to me. I think over like coaches who like overhype and overpromise on what reasonably can be expected, because I think that bleeds into the experience that other coaches have with their athletes. So if you have a coach that's like constantly talking up what they're capable of, like what kind of totals their lifters are capable of getting, like, and you're not also doing that, right? Because you're a reasonable, level-headed human and you understand that like there's a lot more to this than just spitting out numbers. That can be really problematic to just like the general mentality. So those things, I know I'm just like naming kind of general things, but I'm just going to do that.
It's your show.
It's your episode.
The bullshit from like the junior 74s, that vibe, like the call out, the toxicity, like that, that stuff pisses me off too. But I think it's just that.
I think that one is probably the biggest one that's been changing recently and been growing negatively, is that kind of talk from those people, which is rough.
Yeah, it's hard to watch, but I think it's bad for the sport because it makes people feel like
it is very bad for the sport.
It's not like that's not respectful communication. You can have like a competitive relationship, like you can be a competitor with somebody and not disrespect them, like that's and it's too small of a sport for us to get too small of a sport, and the stakes are too low. Right, like we don't have $1 million on the line. Like we're not fighting for $50 million contracts. Like we're literally lifting weights on the internet, like you guys said, and doing it on the nights and weekends when we're not doing our jobs. Like this isn't the UFC. Stop trying to make it the fucking UFC.
So what you're saying, Natalie, is that you wouldn't die for this shit?
No,
you're not ready to go to war.
No, and I'm not. Yeah, there's one recently that a couple of guys are saying that they're training like it's the last 5 weeks of their life,
Yes.
getting ready for Raw Nationals.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I
And I
wouldn't
know what they're
train the last
saying.
5 weeks.
Right.
I do a lot of other things, not training.
Yeah,
I would take out a whole ton of debt and fly all over the world. Like, that's what I would do.
What they're trying to say is that they're working harder than they have before, and that they think that that's going to result in a bigger total. But I think that it's sending a really like it's sending the wrong message. Like this is do or die kind of thing. And it's like, it's really not. Like most of us, if you like, so Bryce and I were talking about it, and Bryce is also, he's been training for over a decade. He's the strongest he's ever been. And I was like, aren't you also doing the most volume and pushing the hardest you've ever pushed in your life right now? And he's like, yeah, actually that's true. And I'm like, but he doesn't feel the need to talk about it like that. Like, just fucking do the work.
Just if you don't post about it, it doesn't happen. We all know that. That's,
yeah.
You didn't even go to the gym that day if you didn't post about it.
Exactly.
If you didn't bring your $2,000 camera set up to watch you do like a 95-pound warm-up squat. Yeah.
Actually, Bryce deadlifted 360 for 2 doubles yesterday, 360 kilos. And
people.
forgot
to specify that.
So
kilos, people.
795 for doubles, and forgot to record.
It didn't happen.
So he did an extra set, right?
It didn't actually happen then.
Yeah. So he was just kind of like, huh, that's how that feels. Like
you can go tell Bryce that 2 people whose like combined squat is less than he benches, that we are not impressed, and it didn't actually happen.
Not impressed.
We do not believe him.
We do not believe it.
You got to do it again today.
You got to prove to Matt and Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. To 2 random people on the internet who don't matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is awesome. So we really appreciate having you on. The last thing we always ask is where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or learn more about your coaching, if you would like to be found by people? Sure.
My Instagram is natalie.907. My website for my coaching is corvusstrength.co. That's CORVUS strength.co. That's basically it.
Awesome. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.